They say you never forget the moment someone tells you that you and everyone you love are disposable. I remember the exact shade of crimson on Gemma Wells's nails as she drummed them against my calendar. Fire engine red, the color of warning signs I should have seen coming. I had built something beautiful at Monroe Technologies. Not the kind of beautiful that shows up in quarterly reports or gets applauded at shareholders' meetings. The invisible kind. The kind that keeps a company breathing when everyone else thinks it is dying. My team, 8 people who did not fit the corporate mold but somehow fit each other perfectly, had saved this place. And now someone who had been here for exactly 3 weeks was telling me to fire them all by Friday. I suppose I should start at the beginning, back when I still believed that hard work and loyalty mattered more than spreadsheets. 5 years ago, I was just another mid-level coordinator at Monroe Technologies, the kind of person who shows up early, stays late, and gets thanked with a generic email once a year. I was invisible by design, which meant I saw everything. I watched brilliant engineers get overlooked because they did not play golf with the right people. I saw customer service reps solve million-dollar problems and receive $25 gift cards as thanks. I witnessed maintenance workers prevent disasters that no one would ever know about. The company was hemorrhaging money back then. Bad decisions from executives who prioritized their bonuses over our future had left us months away from bankruptcy. People were scared. Everyone could feel the ship tilting, taking on water. That was when I approached Hugo Price, our CEO, with an idea so audacious that he almost laughed me out of his office. "Give me 8 people," I told him. 6 months, complete autonomy. I will save this company. Hugo was desperate enough to say yes. He had nothing left to lose. The board was already drafting his resignation letter. I did not choose people with impressive credentials or Ivy League degrees. I chose people who solved problems. Bree, a programmer who had taught herself to code in 3 languages by the time she was 16, could find security vulnerabilities that million-dollar firms missed. Owen, a product designer with an art school background, understood user experience in a way that made our clunky software suddenly intuitive. Ela, who had worked retail before transitioning to client relations, could read people like others read books. Raj, our accountant, saw patterns in numbers that told stories no one else noticed. Tomas, a mechanical engineer who had started in building maintenance, knew every system in our facility and had a network of contacts that spanned 3 industries. Donna, our receptionist who spoke 7 languages, heard things and made connections that our entire intelligence division missed. Kit, a delivery driver who understood our supply chain better than our logistics manager, caught product flaws before they became recalls. And Yvette, who worked in the cafeteria but spent her breaks sketching inventions in worn notebooks, had ideas that would eventually become 3 of our patents. We set up in an old storage area that smelled like cardboard and broken dreams. For 6 months, we worked like people possessed. We did not take vacations. We barely took weekends. We became something more than colleagues. We became family, the kind that shows up for each other, that covers each other's weaknesses and amplifies each other's strengths. 6 months later, Monroe Technologies stabilized. 10 months later, we were growing again. The executives celebrated with champagne and congratulated each other on their brilliant leadership. Not one of them mentioned the 8 people in the basement who had actually saved them. Hugo knew, though. He tripled our budget, gave us real office space with windows that overlooked the city, and granted us the autonomy we needed to keep working our magic. We became the Special Solutions Initiative, though the team preferred to call ourselves the Mavericks. We liked being the outliers who got things done. For 3 years, we thrived in the shadows. We prevented data breaches, designed product features that customers loved, saved accounts that were on the verge of canceling, identified cost savings that added up to millions, and generally kept Monroe Technologies running smoothly while everyone else took the credit. We did not mind. We had each other, we had purpose, and we had Hugo's protection. Then Gemma Wells arrived. The pruner, that was what people started calling her within her first week. She came from a consulting firm that specialized in corporate restructuring, which was a polite way of saying they made money by firing people and selling off assets. She walked through our offices like a general surveying a battlefield, her designer heels clicking against the tile, her expression calculating. She carried an iPad everywhere, constantly taking notes, and her smile never reached her eyes. I should have seen the threat immediately, but I was naive enough to believe that results mattered. Our division had prevented $14 million in potential losses over the past year alone. We had developed 5 new product features that increased user engagement by 43%. Our client retention efforts had saved $3 million in revenue. Surely, I thought, those numbers spoke for themselves. I was wrong. Gemma scheduled a meeting with me 3 weeks after her arrival. I brought all our reports, meticulously documented proof of every contribution we had made. I was actually excited to share what my team had accomplished. I walked into that conference room thinking I was about to impress someone who would finally give us the recognition we deserved. Instead, Gemma barely glanced at my carefully prepared presentation. She tapped a few numbers on her iPad and looked at me with something between pity and contempt. Your division costs $1.2 million annually, she said. That is expensive for support staff. Support staff. The words landed like a slap. We were not support staff. We were the reason Monroe Technologies still existed, but Gemma did not care about context or nuance. She cared about immediate, measurable returns that fit into her narrow paradigm. When I tried to explain the complexity of what we did, she cut me off. I need measurable results, not fairy tales, she said. Over the next few weeks, I watched Gemma systematically dismantle everything that made Monroe Technologies function. She started blocking our access to certain files, claiming we did not have proper clearance. She implemented new approval processes that slowed down our work to a crawl. She called out our division in company-wide meetings, questioning our value, asking pointed questions designed to make us look inefficient. She was building a case against us, and she was doing it in front of everyone. My team felt it. Bree started working longer hours, trying to prove her worth through sheer volume. Owen's designs, usually flowing with creativity, became tight and defensive. Ela stopped taking personal calls from clients, afraid it would look unprofessional. The joy that had always defined our workspace began to evaporate, replaced by a creeping anxiety that followed us home at night. I tried to fight back through proper channels. I scheduled meetings with Gemma, brought even more detailed reports, documented every success with precision. She dismissed everything. Your metrics are subjective, she would say. Or, I see activity, not impact. She had an answer for everything, and none of them acknowledged reality. Then came the day that changed everything. I was working late on a Thursday evening, finishing a report that detailed how Bree had just prevented a security breach that would have cost the company millions. My office had glass walls, a design choice I had always appreciated because it kept me connected to my team. That transparency became a curse when Gemma walked in without knocking. She did not waste time on pleasantries. Fire your entire team by Friday, she said, or I will do it for you. The ultimatum hung in the air like poison. Her crimson nails drummed against my calendar, marking the execution date. This is not negotiable, Nora. Your division costs twice the industry standard. Numbers do not lie. I stood up so fast my chair rolled backward and hit the wall. They exceeded every target, Gemma. They are the backbone of this company. My voice shook, not with fear but with rage. How could she not see what was right in front of her? She laughed. Actually laughed. Backbone? Or burden? The difference, Nora, is that I was brought here to prune dead wood, and your team is the most obviously rotten branch. Her voice dropped to something cruelly intimate. Friday. No compromises. Either you handle it professionally, or I will have security escort them out individually. Your choice. She left before I could respond, her heels clicking away like a countdown. I sat in my glass office, surrounded by thank you cards from my team, photos from our victories, proof of everything we had built together. I thought about Bree, who was putting her daughter through coding camp using her bonus from last year. About Tomas, whose son had just gotten into college because of the recommendation letter that Jerome from the board had written after Tomas fixed his vintage car. About Donna, whose nephew had received a life-changing internship through connections she had made while answering phones. About all of them, these brilliant, essential, undervalued people who had saved this company and were about to be discarded like they meant nothing. That night, I barely slept. I kept running through options, each one more desperate than the last. I could quit and protest, but that would leave my team vulnerable. I could go over Gemma's head to Hugo, but she had been brought in by the board, and Hugo was already under pressure. I could fight through proper HR channels, but that would take weeks we did not have. Every path seemed to lead to the same devastating conclusion. At 3 a.m, sitting at my kitchen table with cold coffee and scattered notes, I realized something crucial. Gemma had made an assumption. She assumed we would accept defeat gracefully. She assumed we were powerless. She assumed that because we worked in the shadows, we had no allies, no proof of our worth, no way to fight back. She had looked at the numbers and missed the people. She had seen the cost without understanding the value. That was her mistake, and I was going to make sure she paid for it. The next morning, I called an emergency meeting with my team at a small park 3 blocks from the office. It was early, barely past dawn, and the morning air still held a chill. They arrived looking worried, sensing that something was very wrong. When everyone had gathered around a weathered picnic table, I told them the truth. Gemma wants you gone by Friday. The reactions were immediate and visceral. Bree's face flushed red. But Winton launches next month, she said, her voice rising. We have been pouring everything into that project for a year. Owen slammed his hand against the table hard enough to leave a mark. 3 years, he said. We gave this place 3 years of our lives. Ela looked like she had been punched. My clients trust me, she whispered. What happens to them? I let them process the shock, the anger, the sense of betrayal. Then I said something that silenced them all. We are not going to accept this. Gemma does not know who you are, what you have done, or what you are capable of. But she is about to find out. That weekend, I began implementing a plan so audacious that even I was not entirely sure it would work. The key was understanding what Gemma valued. She cared about appearances, about looking competent to the board, about quantifiable successes she could claim as her own. She had dismissed us because she genuinely believed we were expendable. What if we let her believe she had won? What if we gave her exactly what she wanted, so completely that she would never question it? On Monday morning, I called Gemma. My voice was carefully neutral, defeated. "You were right," I told her. "The team understands this is a business decision. We will handle the transition professionally." I could practically hear her smile through the phone. "I am glad you are being reasonable," she said. "I have scheduled exit interviews for Friday at 2. Security will collect badges afterward." My team and I spent the next 3 days performing the most elaborate theater of our lives. We cleaned out desks, put personal items in boxes, created detailed transition documents for our replacements. We acted defeated, resigned, professionally compliant. Other employees watched us with sympathy, some with relief that it was not them. Gemma walked through occasionally, observing our orderly retreat with satisfaction. "This is how professionals handle difficult situations," she told someone loud enough for us to hear. What Gemma did not know was that everything we were doing was strategic. Every file we transferred had been carefully prepared. Every training session we conducted was designed to demonstrate how complex our work actually was. Every goodbye we said was to someone who mattered. Bree made sure to mention her upcoming parent-teacher conference to Victoria, the major investor on the board who had helped start the coding camp program. Tomas dropped off Jerome's repaired watch personally, mentioning how much his son was enjoying university. Donna delivered Alistair's perfectly made coffee the way she had every morning for 3 years, remembering the cinnamon and the single cream without being asked. We were not saying goodbye. We were activating a network that Gemma did not know existed. Friday arrived like an execution date. We went through the motions of our exit interviews, sitting across from Gemma as she expressed fake sympathy and handed us standard severance packages. Our badges were collected. Our accounts were deactivated. By 5 in the evening, we officially no longer worked for Monroe Technologies. Gemma sent a text to someone that evening. I know because Bree, who had set up the company's entire communications infrastructure, had left us a few back doors that Gemma did not know about. The message was brief and smug. Clean execution. Well done. That night, I called Hugo. "It is time," I said. "Monday morning. Full board meeting. This is going to be risky." He was quiet for a long moment. "I trust you," he finally said. "But Nora, if this goes wrong, I cannot protect you." "I know," I replied, "but if it goes right, we will not need protection." Monday morning arrived crisp and cold. I wore my navy blue suit, the one I saved for important occasions, and arrived at Monroe Technologies an hour before the board meeting was scheduled to begin. The security guard at the front desk looked confused when I walked in. "I thought you were terminated," he said. I smiled. "So did someone else," I replied. The executive conference room was on the top floor, all glass walls and expensive furniture designed to intimidate. When I walked in at exactly 9 in the morning, Gemma was already there, setting up a presentation. She looked at me like I was a ghost. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice sharp with confusion. "I am presenting to the board," I said calmly. "Did no one tell you?" Before she could respond, Hugo entered with the rest of my team. All 8 of them, dressed professionally, carrying themselves with quiet confidence. Gemma's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Shock, anger, confusion, and finally something that might have been fear. "This is inappropriate," she said, turning to Hugo. "These people were terminated. I authorized it myself." Hugo's expression was carefully neutral. "Did you?" he asked mildly. "I do not recall signing those termination papers. As CEO, I believe I need to authorize separations of this scale." Gemma opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I was operating under your authority," she finally managed. "You hired me to make difficult decisions." The board members began arriving then, and what happened next was something Gemma clearly had not anticipated. Alistair, the board chairman, walked straight to Tomas and embraced him warmly. "How is Elena?" he asked. "Did she win first place at the science fair?" Victoria pulled out her phone to show Bree pictures from the coding camp, gushing about how transformative the program had been. Jerome accepted his perfectly made coffee from Donna and asked about her nephew's internship. One by one, the board members greeted my team like old friends, because that was what they were. While Gemma had spent 3 weeks looking at spreadsheets, my team had spent 3 years building relationships. Tomas had repaired vintage cars and helped with school projects. Bree had mentored young girls in technology. Donna had connected people and solved problems. Owen had volunteered his design expertise for board members' pet projects. Ela had become the person clients called when they needed someone who actually listened. Raj had provided financial insights that saved personal investments. Kit had ensured that important deliveries never got lost. Yvette had shared her brilliant ideas freely, some of which had made board members look very good in their own companies. They were not just employees, they were people. And that was the one thing Gemma had never bothered to discover. Gemma grabbed my arm as I walked past, her crimson nails digging into my jacket. "You set me up," she hissed. "You knew who they were." I gently removed her hand. "You never asked who they were," I replied. "You only looked at numbers on a spreadsheet, not people." The meeting began with Hugo at the head of the table. "Before we start with the regular agenda," he said, "we need to address the events of last Friday." Gemma straightened, clearly ready to defend her decisions. "I eliminated an unnecessary division that was consuming resources without measurable returns," she said confidently. "It was a difficult but necessary restructuring." Jerome leaned forward. "Unnecessary," he repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. "You mean the team that saved this company?" Gemma stumbled over her words. "With respect, that is not reflected in any official reports. The metrics I reviewed showed excessive costs without proportional output." That was when I stood up. "If I may," I said, "I would like to provide some context." I opened my laptop and connected to the presentation screen. What followed was a detailed breakdown of every single contribution my team had made over the past 3 years. But I did not just show numbers. I showed stories. When Bree prevented a security breach, I showed the potential damage, the companies that had suffered similar attacks, the millions in losses and reputation damage we had avoided. When Owen designed a new feature, I showed the user engagement metrics that had skyrocketed, the competition that had tried and failed to replicate our success. When Isla saved a major client relationship, I showed the revenue projection we would have lost, the ripple effect it would have had on other accounts. Every single one of my team members had contributions that were profound and measurable, once you knew where to look. Gemma's face had gone pale. "But these accomplishments are not attributed to this division in any quarterly reports," she protested. Raj spoke up for the first time. "They are," he said mildly, "just not obviously. Our work shows up in security improvements, customer retention rates, product development successes, operational efficiency gains. We never needed credit. We just needed to do the work." Then I showed the board the email exchanges between Gemma and me. Every detailed report I had sent her, every request for a meeting, every attempt to explain our value. And her responses? Cursory dismissals that made it clear she had never actually read what I sent. "You eliminated a team without understanding their function," Victoria said, her voice cold. "That is not restructuring. That is negligence." Gemma was scrambling now. "I understand costs," she shot back. "Efficiency requires making hard decisions." Jerome cut her off. "Efficiency without effectiveness is just organized failure," he said, a phrase I am borrowing from Raj, who shared it with me last month when helping me understand some investment decisions. Hugo delivered the final blow. "Let me be clear," he said. "Gemma attempted to terminate 8 employees whose work is directly tied to projects representing 30% of our projected revenue for next quarter." He paused to let that sink in. "Fortunately, Nora informed me of this situation before it became catastrophic. These team members have been transferred to a special project status, reporting directly to the board." "They never actually stopped working." The room fell into stunned silence. Gemma looked around wildly, searching for an ally and finding none. "This is not over," she said, her voice shaking. "The board may be impressed by this performance, but numbers do not lie. This team is still expensive, still difficult to quantify, still a risk." The meeting broke for lunch, but the confrontation was far from finished. During the break, Gemma cornered me in the hallway. "You sabotaged me," she said. "You deliberately made me look incompetent." I met her eyes steadily. "You did that yourself," I replied. "I just made sure the board saw what you were really doing." Her expression turned calculating. "This is not finished," she said quietly. "Results can be reinterpreted. Reports can be analyzed differently. I was brought here to make hard changes, and I will not be stopped by office politics or friend networks." There was something chilling in her tone, a determination that went beyond professional disagreement. That afternoon, Hugo pulled me aside. "Gemma has requested access to all financial data related to your team's projects," he said. "She wants to do a comprehensive audit. I have assigned Raj to work with her. Full transparency, full oversight." I felt a knot of worry form in my stomach. "She is looking for something to use against us," I said. Hugo nodded. "I know. That is why Raj is helping her. If there is anything to find, better we know about it first." But Raj found something else entirely. 3 days later, he came to my apartment looking shaken. "She is not just looking for inefficiency," he told me. "She has been asking about our vendor approval processes, our external contractor procedures. She wants to know how we select outside services." That struck me as odd. Why would Gemma care about vendor selection when she was supposedly focused on internal costs? Bree called me that same evening, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Someone accessed our project files," she said, "from Gemma's account. They edited timestamps, modified security protocols. She is sabotaging Winton." My blood ran cold. The Winton project was our flagship product launch, scheduled for the following month. If it failed, it would devastate Monroe Technologies. And if Gemma could make it look like my team's fault, she would have her justification. We held an emergency meeting at my apartment that night. Bree had already recovered clean backups of everything. She is trying to discredit us, Bree explained, showing us the modifications. If Winton fails and our fingerprints are all over the broken code, who gets blamed? Kit had been doing research. I looked into her history, he said, spreading papers across my coffee table. Same pattern at 3 previous companies. She eliminates creative teams, restructures, then leaves before the long-term damage becomes obvious. Raj made the connection. She has been particularly interested in our external vendor approval process, he said slowly. Then he showed us what he had found. Articles about Gemma's previous restructuring projects. 3 companies, 3 major overhauls, and every single one had subsequently signed huge contracts with the same outside vendor, Vanguard Systems. I felt pieces clicking together. She is not just cutting teams, I said. She is positioning contracts. If Winton fails, the company will need emergency external support, and I bet she has a vendor recommendation ready. We spent the next week carefully gathering evidence while pretending everything was normal. Gemma believed she had successfully turned the board against us with her audit request. She did not know that Raj was documenting every suspicious inquiry she made. She did not know that Bree had created an encrypted backup of every file she tried to corrupt. She did not know that Owen had security camera footage of her accessing the office at midnight. She did not know that Kit had traced her personal phone calls to Vanguard Systems. I needed to draw her out, to make her confident enough to show her hand completely, so I played my part. I went to Gemma, looking worried and defeated. The team has found serious problems with Winton, I told her. Critical security vulnerabilities that need immediate attention. We may need external emergency support. Gemma's eyes lit up with barely concealed satisfaction. I may have a recommendation, she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. By the next morning, she had presented 3 vendor proposals to the board, pushing Vanguard Systems as the comprehensive solution. Their bid was nearly $2.3 million, more than twice what the other vendors quoted. This is the only firm with the expertise to handle a crisis of this magnitude, Gemma insisted. I pretended to be concerned but ultimately deferred to her judgment. The board, worried about Winton's launch, seemed ready to approve the emergency funding. Meanwhile, my team worked around the clock. Bree restored all the sabotaged code. Owen documented every security camera entry, showing Gemma's late-night visits. Raj traced financial records showing suspicious payments into offshore accounts after each of Gemma's previous restructuring projects. We built an airtight case. The final board meeting was scheduled for Friday morning. Gemma arrived early, confident and prepared. She had dressed for victory, her suit immaculate, her presentation polished. She began by highlighting the critical problems with Winton, describing in alarming detail the security failures and code vulnerabilities. All caused by inadequate oversight from the internal team, she explained, casting pointed glances at me. The only solution is comprehensive external intervention. Vanguard Systems has guaranteed they can remediate these issues, but it will require significant investment and immediate action. Hugo turned to me. Nora, would you like to respond? I stood up slowly, deliberately. Before I addressed those concerns, I said, let me show you something. I opened my laptop and projected the current Winton build onto the screen. Then I ran a complete security diagnostic in real time. Every test passed. Every protocol functioned perfectly. The system was flawless. Gemma's face drained of color. That is impossible, she stammered. The reports clearly show critical failures. I pulled up a split screen. On one side, security footage of Gemma entering the building at midnight 3 nights in a row. On the other side, screen recordings of her computer as she methodically corrupted test results and inserted malicious code into our systems. The room went utterly silent. Then I played an audio recording. Gemma's voice, captured through her personal phone during a call with Vanguard Systems. We have created the necessary problems, her voice said clearly. The board will approve emergency intervention tomorrow. Yes, the full $2.3 million. Our usual arrangement for my consulting fee applies. Gemma lunged toward my laptop, knocking papers off the table. You trapped me, she screamed. This was a setup. Hugo signaled to security, who had been waiting outside. Not a trap, I said quietly. We just watched you do exactly what you did at 3 other companies. The difference is that this time, someone was paying attention. Raj stepped forward with financial documents. Here is the pattern, he said, distributing folders to each board member. After each of Gemma's restructuring projects, payments totaling approximately 20% of the awarded contract value flowed through shell corporations into accounts she controls. This is not cost-cutting. This is fraud. The board members looked through the evidence in growing horror. Gemma tried one last desperate play. You people set me up, she shouted. You created an elaborate trap. Victoria's voice cut through the chaos like ice. No, she said. We hired you to improve this company. Instead, you tried to destroy the team that actually saved it, and you did it to enrich yourself. Alistair stood. Security, please escort Miss Wells from the building. Our legal team will be in contact. As security led Gemma away, still protesting, still trying to shift blame, I felt something I had not felt in months. Relief. Not triumph, not celebration. Just the profound relief of being safe again. Hugo addressed the board. I am creating a permanent position for Nora's team, he said. The Strategic Integrity Division, reporting directly to leadership. Their job will be to see what others miss, to value what others overlook, and to protect what matters most. Nora, I am putting you in charge. The following week, news broke that Gemma Wells had been arrested on multiple counts of fraud and embezzlement. Her previous employers, alerted by our evidence, began their own investigations. The pattern was extensive. She had been running the same scheme for years. Winton launched on schedule to overwhelming success. The Strategic Integrity Division moved into a new office suite, no longer hidden in the basement but positioned at the heart of the company. We hired 3 new people, not because we needed them, but because we found brilliant individuals who had been overlooked elsewhere, people who fit our philosophy of seeing value where others saw cost. One evening, about a month after everything concluded, my team gathered in our new space to celebrate. Someone had brought champagne, and we raised glasses as the sun set over the city. To seeing value in unexpected places, I said. And to leaders who actually look, Ela added, nodding toward me. I thought about Gemma then, about the prison cell that would be her home for the next several years. She had believed that people were reducible to numbers on a balance sheet, that relationships were weaknesses to be exploited, that power meant never having to understand the people you controlled. Her greatest mistake was not targeting my team. It was assuming we would go quietly. We had not, and in the end, that assumption cost her everything. The truth I learned through all of this is simple but profound. Value is not always visible on a spreadsheet. The most important work often happens in shadows, done by people who never seek recognition. Real leaders understand this. They look beyond immediate costs to see long-term worth. They recognize that relationships are not exploitable resources but the foundation of genuine success. They know that the people who seem most expendable are sometimes the most essential. Gemma Wells never learned that lesson. She measured everything and understood nothing. She saw numbers where she should have seen people. She found costs where she should have found value. And when she finally encountered people who refused to be dismissed, who stood up for themselves and each other, who fought back with intelligence and integrity, she discovered that all her calculations had been based on a fundamental error. She had assumed we were powerless because we worked in the shadows. But shadows are where the real work happens. And when you threaten the people who actually keep things running, who solve the problems no one else sees, who care deeply about something beyond their own advancement, you learn a hard truth. We are not powerless. We are just patient. And when we finally step into the light, we bring evidence, relationships, and the kind of justice that spreadsheets cannot calculate. That night, as my team laughed and celebrated, I looked around at these 8 extraordinary people and felt overwhelming gratitude. Not because we had won, though we had. Not because we had exposed corruption, though we did, but because we had proven something fundamental. That caring matters. That relationships are strength, not weakness. That the people who seem most ordinary are often most extraordinary. That value cannot be reduced to a line item on a budget report. Gemma believed in pruning, in cutting away what she deemed unnecessary. But she never understood that she was not a gardener carefully shaping growth. She was a destroyer, killing what she did not comprehend. And in the end, the tree she tried to cut down had roots deeper than she ever imagined, connections she never saw, and a resilience she never anticipated. We did not just survive, we thrived. And every day, as I walk into our office and see my team doing the work they love, solving problems others cannot see, creating value others overlook, I remember the lesson Gemma taught us inadvertently. Never underestimate the people who work in the shadows. Never assume that quiet means weak. Never believe that because something cannot easily be measured, it has no value. The pruner made those mistakes, and they cost her everything, while we, the supposedly expendable team she tried to eliminate, became the heart of the company she tried to fix. That is not revenge, that is justice. And it tastes sweeter than any victory calculated on a spreadsheet.